Dear Esther is a 2012 visual short story created by the Chinese Room. No, it's not a game. A game, to quote dictionary.com, is a competitive activity involving skill, chance, or endurance on the part of two or more persons who play according to a set of rules, usually for their own amusement or for that of spectators. It's actually so minimalist in its interaction that the closest thing to Dear Esther structurally is a visual novel. The only real difference is that visuals are 3D and you can look around. Also, it's only an hour long, making it, as I said, a visual short story, not a visual novel. There is no battle going on here, no challenge to overcome, no test of skill, no rules or structure or goal. The point is to walk forward down what is actually an entirely linear path, despite appearances otherwise, look at the scenery, and listen to a short story narrated as you progress along the path. Dear Esther served as a kind of prototype for what we now call walking simulators, where the primary interaction you have with the work is walking through it and observing and listening to what it has to say. This is not an inherently bad concept, but it is easy to screw up if the experience you create to walk through isn't enjoyable or meaningful. That's the problem with Dear Esther. Its experience is one of disconnect between visual and narrative. The point of a walking simulator is similar to the point of a book or a painting. It's to see what it has to say. The difference being the experience of viewing it is in 3D, and we can involve some interactivity if the creator wishes, which throws open the door of possibilities that this kind of medium can provide. Dear Esther has a fundamental problem with how it creates this experience. The visual experience is one of an unidentified fictional Hebridean island, and it is, admittedly, quite intricately and beautifully crafted. The narrative experience is a narrated short story, told at dispersed intervals, one paragraph at a time, as you move through the 3D space. The problem is the delivery of this narrative. The story itself might be just fine on a page, but when split into paragraphs and scattered about, slowly, and I do mean slowly, regurgitated over the course of an hour, the story becomes disjointed because everything is separated and there's no way, unlike in text, to recontextualize anything, to reread anything, or even remind you what the last sentence of the previous paragraph was. Thus, details get lost, and to top it all off, some paragraphs are randomized. So on one playthrough you hear one bit of narration, and on another you hear a different one. And if you're as bored as I was, you don't want to have to play it through again to hear it. So you don't even get to experience all the story's detail in one playthrough. The story's actual content is irrelevant in this case. It's simply the fact that it's told in such an incomplete, disconnected, scattershot way that makes it hard to follow and hard to care about. And that is not to say that underneath it all the story is actually amazing. It's not. It's pretty meh. I'm not being simplistic when I say the story is literally, guy's wife dies, he describes his feelings afterwards, and how he can't get over it. That's it. Nothing really happens, he just talks about his feelings for an hour, plus a bunch of pointless musing about previous visitors to the island, with a lot of purple prose. Pretentious purple prose. It's not going to win any literary awards anytime soon. Except at a video game award show because, well, this industry's standards for narrative are crap. This problem is then compounded by the fact that the visuals have little to nothing to do with the narration you're hearing. They don't offer interesting visual accompaniment, shedding more light on particular aspects of anything. It's really as simple as narrator mentions house, there's a house. There's nothing interesting or important to see in the house, there's just a house. Narrator mentions paper boats, there's paper boats in the water. Narrator mentions caves that don't really have anything to do with the story. You walk through a bunch of caves that don't contribute anything to the story. You're essentially looking at a 3D painting while someone natters on in the most confusing and discontinuous way possible about stuff that happened elsewhere, at a different time, or about the narrator's feelings. I don't see anything that happens to the main character. I don't experience any events, or even evidence of past events, nor does anything I look at contribute to my understanding of it, nor am I even getting the full story, because which text gets narrated is partially random. Plus, I can barely remember what was said half an hour ago because the narration is so disconnected in its presentation. By the end, I just didn't care anymore, because the game isn't even trying to make you care. It seems to think that having really pretty graphics and a really awesome soundtrack automatically makes its disconnected, incomplete, pretentious narration into art. It does not.